I didn't expect the knock on the door. Not that late. Not when my new husband was lying beside me, breathing deeply, finally asleep after what felt like the longest, happiest day of our lives. I opened it just a little, trying not to wake him, and there he was, Ryan, my husband's best friend, the man who had stood by his side today in a perfectly tailored suit, smiling, raising a glass to our love. He held 2 half-filled champagne flutes and looked at me like he shouldn't be there, but couldn't stay away. Couldn't sleep, he said softly, eyes flicking past me to where my husband slept, completely gone to the world. I thought you might still be awake. I should have sent him away. I should have smiled politely, closed the door, and climbed back into bed with the man I just vowed forever to. But I didn't. Something about the way Ryan stood there, hesitant, shoulders tense like he was fighting with himself, kept me frozen. He stepped in, quiet as a shadow, and offered me a glass. My fingers brushed his when I took it, and I felt the tiniest jolt like static under my skin. You looked breathtaking today, he said finally, his voice low. I couldn't take my eyes off you. My chest tightened. No one had ever said something to me like that while looking at me the way he was now, like it physically hurt him to admit it. Ryan, I whispered, warning in my voice, though my throat felt dry. He smiled, but it was sad, heavy. I've loved you for a long time, he confessed, just like that. No hesitation, no pretending anymore. And I was the one who convinced him to marry you. Because I knew, if I couldn't have you, at least you'd be with someone who adores you. The room felt smaller, hotter. My pulse thundered in my ears. My husband, the man who owned my heart in every right way, was just a few feet away, completely unaware. And yet Ryan's words, they didn't feel wrong. They felt like the truth I'd been too afraid to see. He took one slow step toward me and I didn't move back. Not yet. I didn't know what to say. My lips parted but nothing came out. Ryan stood there, so close now that I could smell the faint trace of his cologne, something warm and earthy that reminded me of autumn nights. His eyes didn't leave mine, not even for a second. You shouldn't say that, I whispered finally, clutching the champagne flute like it was the only thing grounding me. I know, he admitted softly, but I've been holding it in for years, and tonight watching you walk down that aisle. His jaw tightened, like the words were tearing him apart. It broke me. Because you were everything I've ever wanted, and you'll never be mine. I turned away from him, staring at the floor, at the soft glow of the bedside lamp. My husband stirred slightly in his sleep, mumbling something incoherent before rolling to the other side. The reality of it hit me. My husband, my vows, the ring still shining on my finger, and Ryan standing behind me, saying the very thing I'd always suspected but never let myself believe. Because Ryan had always been different. Charming, attentive in a way that made me feel seen. The kind of man who remembered the little things, who could make me laugh until I cried. But he'd always been my husband's best friend. Untouchable, forbidden. Ryan, I said again, my voice trembling this time. When I turned back to face him, his expression wasn't just longing. It was aching restraint. His hand flexed slightly, like he was fighting the urge to reach for me. And maybe it was that look, so raw, so honest, that made me take one slow step toward him. Not enough to close the distance, but enough to let him know I wasn't sending him away. His breath hitched, just the faintest sound, and the room suddenly felt like it was holding its breath with us. I don't want to ruin anything, he murmured, his voice lower now, deeper, like he was afraid of what might happen if we both stopped pretending. And yet he didn't leave. Neither did I. Something electric hummed in the silence between us, impossible to ignore. My fingers tightened on the glass. I realized I hadn't taken a single sip. My pulse was too loud, too fast. And in that moment I knew, if I let this go even one step further, nothing would ever be the same again. But I didn't move. Neither did he. Ryan set his champagne down on the dresser, the glass clinking softly against the wood. I still hadn't moved. I couldn't. He took a slow breath like he was steadying himself. I shouldn't be here, he whispered. You shouldn't, I agreed, my voice barely audible. But still neither of us moved. The quiet between us was deafening. Every tick of the clock on the nightstand felt like it was counting down to something we couldn't stop. Then, as if some invisible thread pulled him toward me, Ryan stepped closer. Just one step. Close enough now that I could feel the warmth radiating from his body. I felt my own breath grow shallow. He reached out, not to grab me, not to cross any line, but just to gently tuck a loose strand of hair behind my ear. The faintest brush of his fingers grazed my cheek, and the contact sent a shiver down my spine. My eyes fluttered closed without meaning to. "God, I'm sorry," he murmured, his voice almost broken. "I can't stop looking at you." I opened my eyes, meeting his gaze. There was no anger, no cocky confidence, only something deep, vulnerable, and aching. And that was the moment my resolve cracked. My hand, without my permission, without thought, lifted, fingers brushing against his chest, feeling the slow, steady thump of his heart under my palm. He stilled completely, like that small touch had taken away all the air in the room. "Ryan," I whispered again, but this time there was no warning in my voice. His hand came up, hesitated, then rested lightly on my waist. Not pulling, not claiming, just being there. The weight of it was enough to make every nerve in my body come alive. Neither of us said a word. We just stood there, suspended in something dangerous and irresistible, as if moving too quickly would shatter whatever fragile control we had left. And yet, deep down, I think we both knew. Control was already slipping. His hand lingered at my waist, light as a question. I should have stepped back. I should have ended it right there. But I didn't. The soft rise and fall of my husband's breathing filled the room. A cruel reminder that this moment was as forbidden as it could possibly be. And maybe that was why it felt so impossible to resist. Ryan's thumb brushed against the thin fabric of my dress, just enough to make my breath hitch. "You have no idea how many times I've dreamed of this," he murmured, eyes fixed on mine, voice so low it was almost a confession to himself more than to me. The sound of his words settled deep in my chest, stirring something I'd buried long ago. Something I never let myself acknowledge. Whenever he smiled at me, whenever he made me laugh in ways my husband never quite could. I tried to speak, but the words tangled in my throat. My hand was still resting on his chest, feeling his heart pounding harder now, mirroring my own. "I can't," I started, shaking my head. He leaned in just slightly, close enough that I felt the heat of his breath on my cheek. "Then tell me to leave." My lips parted, but nothing came out. Ryan's eyes darkened with something raw, something that made my whole body tense with anticipation. Slowly, his fingers traced a delicate line down my arm, and goosebumps followed his touch like sparks chasing fire. The air between us was heavy now, thick with everything unsaid. One more step, just one, and we'd be close enough to feel everything we'd both been denying for years. And I didn't step back. Neither did he. The tiniest smile tugged at his lips, bittersweet and full of restraint. "I knew you felt it too," he whispered. And then so slowly I almost didn't realize it was happening. He leaned in until his forehead rested against mine. We stood there, breathing the same air, hearts pounding in perfect unison, and I knew, whatever happened next, there would be no going back. His forehead against mine felt impossibly intimate. More than a kiss, more than anything we'd ever shared before. I could feel his breath, warm and uneven, brushing against my lips. It would have been so easy to close that last inch. Ryan's hand slid higher along my waist, resting just under my ribs, and the weight of it made my whole body ache in ways I couldn't explain. "You have no idea what you do to me," he whispered, voice rough, like every word cost him something. I swallowed hard, my throat dry. "This isn't fair," I breathed. "No," he agreed, his eyes locking onto mine, intense and unyielding. "But I've been in love with you for years, and I'm done pretending I'm not." The room felt too small, too hot, like the air itself was charged with everything we weren't supposed to feel. My husband shifted in his sleep again, and the sound made my stomach twist with guilt, yet it didn't stop me. Ryan's fingers traced the line of my jaw, tilting my chin up just slightly. His touch was gentle, almost reverent, like he'd been waiting for this moment forever. And then his lips brushed mine. Not a kiss, not really. Just the faintest ghost of one. As if he was giving me a chance to pull away. But I didn't. My eyes closed and I felt the world tilt. Everything else fading except for the heat between us. The second time he didn't hesitate. His lips pressed to mine, soft and unhurried, tasting of champagne and years of longing. My whole body reacted, heart pounding, breath faltering, every nerve alive in ways I hadn't felt in so long. It was wrong. God, it was so wrong. but it felt like the most inevitable thing in the world. When he finally pulled back just enough to look at me, his eyes were wild, conflicted, desperate. "If I stop now," he murmured, "I'll regret it forever." And I realized with terrifying clarity, so would I. The space between us was gone. There wasn't a single thought left in my head except him. His touch, his warmth, the way he was looking at me like I was the only thing that had ever mattered. Ryan kissed me again, deeper this time, his hand sliding up to cradle the back of my neck. The tenderness in the way he held me made my chest ache almost as much as the heat pooling low inside me. I should have stopped it. I knew that. But every time his lips moved against mine, I melted further into him. He pulled back just barely, resting his forehead against mine, breathing hard. I've imagined this more times than I can admit. The rawness in his voice undid me. I'd always known there was something between us, even if I buried it under layers of guilt and loyalty. "Ryan," my voice cracked, as if saying his name alone carried too much weight. His fingers traced the line of my collarbone, featherlight, sending shivers racing through me. "Tell me to stop," he whispered. But I didn't. Instead, I leaned into him, letting my lips find his again, tasting years of unspoken feelings, of quiet glances and secret what-ifs. His hand traveled slowly along my side, fingertips grazing the thin fabric of my dress. Every place he touched felt hotter, more alive, like my body had been waiting for this without even knowing it. I could feel him trembling slightly, like even he couldn't believe this was happening. The sound of my husband breathing in the bed behind us should have been enough to pull me back to reality. But I couldn't stop. I didn't want to. When Ryan kissed along my jaw, slow and deliberate, a soft sound escaped me before I could hold it back. And that was the moment I realized I wasn't just letting this happen. I wanted it. Ryan's lips traced a path down my neck, each touch softer, slower, like he was savoring every second. My fingers curled into the fabric of his shirt, gripping it just to keep myself steady. I'd never felt like this before. Every sense heightened, my skin hypersensitive to every brush of his hands, every breath against me. When he finally pulled back just enough to look at me, his eyes were dark with something between desire and despair. "We can't take this back," he whispered, his voice barely more than a breath. "I know," I admitted, my chest tightening with equal parts guilt and need. And yet neither of us stopped. His hand slid to the small of my back, guiding me closer until there was nothing left between us. Our lips met again, hungrier this time, like years of restraint had finally shattered. The world outside that room ceased to exist. There was only him, his heat, his touch, the way he made me feel like every inch of me was alive in ways I hadn't felt in so long. My husband mumbled something in his sleep, and we froze, hearts hammering in sync, fear and thrill tangling together in the air. But when the silence returned, our eyes met, and neither of us stepped away. Ryan brushed his thumb across my cheek, so tender it almost hurt. "I've loved you too long to pretend anymore," he said softly. And this time, when his lips found mine again, I didn't resist. I kissed him back like I'd been waiting for this moment as much as he had. And I knew whatever happened when the morning came, this night would change everything. Time blurred after that. Every kiss, every touch felt like a secret we were writing onto each other's skin. Ryan's hands explored me with a kind of reverence, never rushing, like he couldn't believe I was real, that this was real. Every brush of his fingers left sparks in its wake, pulling soft sounds from me I didn't recognize as my own. We moved carefully, quietly, like two people terrified of being caught, but too far gone to stop. There was no hurry, no frantic need. Just this slow, aching inevitability. The tension between us wasn't just desire. It was years of unsaid words, of pretending not to notice the way my heart always jumped when he smiled at me. At one point he pulled back, his forehead pressed to mine again, breathing hard. "This feels like a dream," he murmured. "Then don't wake up," I whispered, my voice shaking. The way he looked at me then, it wasn't lust. It was love, raw and unguarded, and it made my chest ache in ways that were almost unbearable. Every time his lips touched mine again, I melted deeper, forgetting the world outside that room, forgetting my vows, forgetting the man sleeping just a few feet away. I didn't care. Not then. Because in that moment, Ryan wasn't just my husband's best friend. He was the man I'd unknowingly been waiting for all along. I don't know when we finally stopped. At some point, exhaustion pulled us under, tangled together in the same bed where my husband slept just hours before. The sunlight creeping through the curtains was what woke me. For a few blissful seconds I forgot everything. Forgot the ring on my finger, forgot the man I just married. But then I felt Ryan's arm draped over me, heavy and warm, his breath steady against the back of my neck. And reality came crashing in. My stomach twisted, guilt and longing colliding in a way that left me breathless. Ryan stirred behind me, pressing the faintest kiss to my shoulder before whispering, "I meant everything I said." I closed my eyes, my heart aching with the weight of what we'd done, because as much as I wanted to regret it, I didn't. And as I quietly slipped out of the bed, careful not to wake him, one truth settled deep inside me. My marriage had started with a lie. And Ryan was the only part of it that felt real.